Good morning, Michigan Athletic Directors. We are here again. The MIAAA is offering some outstanding webinars. And this one that we have, Honest Games, is here this morning to present some information on how to prepare your student athletes for the recruiting process. We have Courtney Ricard with us. Courtney is a young lady that has spent over 20 years working in the college field of trying to help our student athletes in the recruiting process. She's been very successful, have had a number of stops, and she's going to be our presenter this morning. This is a third in our series from Honest Game, and they are one of our major sponsors of the MIAAA. We're excited for you to join us. Also, so that you do know this is being recorded, so that you'll be able to refer back to it with information or share it with any of your other colleagues. So I'm going to hand it off to Courtney, and appreciate you being here this morning.
All right, thanks, Tim. Thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be jumping on with the MIAAA today. And really, the athletic directors are such a key piece, such a key role in the progress of your student athletes, and really to prepare them to go to college. You play a crucial role. So, from everyone at Honest Game and from my experience in the college level, I thank you. So for those that are not familiar, Honest Game software, we really take the guesswork out of these complex NCAA rules, right? It's a maze, it's a confusing bit of metrics about how do you get to be eligible in the college space. And Honest Game really takes that out of all that worry off your plates. So as Tim mentioned, I came to Honest Game after over 20 years at Division I institutions overseeing the academics and compliance at those schools. And so that was really where I got started, was working every day with college coaches, obviously actively recruiting high school student athletes. And so I was excited to jump on this webinar with you all today, because to get to the high school athletic directors, having watched some of the experiences of college coaches, I think there's so much that we can talk about today. I will keep it to time, but definitely I'm excited to kind of bridge these two worlds. So I left college athletics to join Honest Game because we really have solved that issue of this recruiting, this academic space that students are in. So without further ado, we'll jump in here. And I think this is not news to any athletic director out there. That research really shows that being involved in extracurricular activities for high school students just helps them in their paths, in their academic paths, in their professional paths, right? We really see that students are much more likely to go to college if they participate in extracurricular activities, sports being part of that. But then also, if you take a look even further after college, that 94% of women hold C-suite level positions are former athletes. That really says something, and I think that's what we see. I saw that in the college space every day. Students do better in academics when they're in season, when they're structured. This is part of their everyday role, and you all see that on a daily basis. So at the end of the day, we take a look, and 30 to 50% of schools across the U.S. are either unaccredited or lapsed with the NCAA Eligibility Center. And that provides a huge problem for these student athletes, right? Because we know academics is required not just to get a scholarship to go to college or to compete, to be accepted. Just for a student athlete to be on a roster and practice, they have to meet academic eligibility rules. And so academics being inserted into this recruiting conversation is really important. I think a former Division I coach, Stephanie Bernthal, said it best, really, that academic eligibility is the doorway, right? Recruiting opportunities happen, opportunities for college sports happen once you can open that door of academic eligibility. And I saw it in the college space. College coaches are recruiting a large stack of student athletes. They've got transcripts like this, and the academically eligible student athletes come to the top of a very tall pile of transcripts. And that's really what we want to talk about, is making sure that the academics are on point to just open the door and start the way towards college recruiting. So today we'll talk about the roles of all of these people in the student athletes village, right? The family, the coaches, the athletic directors, the counselors. We also want to talk about some misconceptions about college athletic recruiting. I think there's a lot of myths out there. We'll talk about some just basic recruiting rules in all of the spaces, right? NCAA Divisions 1, 2, 3, NAIA, and junior college. And we have some timelines, both for student athletes and for athletic directors, about how to be walking with your students together, looking at official versus unofficial visits, jumping into some summer camp concepts, and then just a roadmap to what does signing an NLI mean, and where does that go? So there's a lot of people in this web of student athlete experience in high school, right? We've got coaches, and they really need to be involved in communicating with the college coaches, fair assessment of the talent, right? Coaches and athletic directors should really be looking at what's the ability of the student athlete? How are they progressing? Are they getting better? Do they have potential to get better once they get to college? And I think that's really important to talk about their ability in a fair perspective. I always joke about, parents, once they have children, that fair perspective might be off, but the people that can see the true talent are those high school coaches, and athletic directors, and that's really important. Also the counselors to really help with that academic piece too. And all of these roles play a crucial piece in this puzzle about allowing that student to move on forward. Some misconceptions that we want to talk about, this Division I or bust. And I talk about this all the time when we meet with students and families. There's so many professional athletes, right? NFL, Major League Baseball, they did not come through a Division I lens, right? They came through other opportunities. And there's so many opportunities at the Division II, Division III, NAIA, JUCO levels, where students can get great experiences playing competitive athletics. And if they want to go on and play professional, they might have that opportunity in those areas as well. I always say, do you want to go to a Division I school and sit the bench? Or would you like to try Division II, III, NAIA and have a lot of playing time? Those are conversations that high school athletic directors and coaches can really start to have. Many students think if you receive an email from a coach that you're being recruited. In a lot of sports where they're recruiting for numbers, those might be actually mass emails. And so it's important to know if a student says, I got an email from a school, they might not be specifically being recruited, but they might be in a larger pool. But that's where that student has to jump on and respond. And we'll talk about that too. Sometimes people think college coaches don't want to hear from prospective athletes. That is 100% not true. College coaches are very busy people, right? They're recruiting for their incoming students. They're coaching their current team. Now with the transfer portal and all the things happening in college athletics, they're constantly recruiting, right? And so they would love if some of that work is taken off their plate and high school students are reaching out. Academics don't matter if you're a highly recruited athlete. That is definitely not the case. Too many times we see student athletes who are ineligible academically and can't sign their NLI. They can't take that full ride. So academics plays a huge role. Some students think if I'm good enough, colleges will just find me, right? And it's like a needle in a haystack. There are thousands of students across the country trying to get spots on college rosters. And you can't just sit back and play a passive role as a student. And some people think that the recruiting process doesn't start till that junior year. And that is definitely not the case, especially if you put the lens on that academics is part of the recruiting process. Academic eligibility starts the first day students are in 9th grade. And so you really have to start thinking about that piece. In terms of the Division I and II coaches, they're really stuck to what the NCAA has given them in terms of the guardrails about when to recruit, right? And so recruiting conversations and recruiting activities are really changing on the daily throughout high school. And it's going to be based on what year the students are. So if students are in their sophomore, junior, senior year, recruiting rules for those students are going to be different based on what year they are. Division I and Division II have different rules as well. So that's important to know. And then there are specific times of the year when there are dead periods where coaches cannot be actively recruiting. And we actually have a few slides that drill down those times and what those terms mean. We have a great QR code here if you want to jump in and take a look, because Division I and II recruiting calendars are different for each sport. They're different for Division I and Division II. And also they change yearly. And there's many updates. And so we could list them, but literally at the minute that we push stop on recording, there might be some changes too. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the most up-to-date recruiting guidelines, and that QR code will take you there. So we always say the calendar matters, right? It's important to know. Some students will say, well, I'm not getting any response. Why not? Well, it could be a time when a coach can't respond, or that student might be too young, right? So Division I, coaches can begin sending recruits materials and electronic correspondence as early as that sophomore year for some sports. So that's good to be aware of. Division I coaches can start to call families and students as early as their sophomore year in high school. And also in terms of contact. So contact is a little bit different depending on how they define it. Is it a contact in the home? Is it contact on the high school campus? Is it contact off at another event? But that can start as early as junior year. And so it's important to know where the contact is going to happen, and when the calendar that will happen. There's a lot of terms in recruiting. I said it's like a whole myriad of words that might be a little bit confusing. So we chose a few to go through today. The first one would be, what is a dead period, right? So prospective college coaches can have no in-person contact with recruits during a dead period anywhere. They cannot go watch recruits play, and they cannot invite recruits to campus or see recruits off campus. That's a true dead time for coaches. They cannot be involved in those things. Coaches can call and text and email recruits during dead periods. So there will be some correspondence happening just from that level. What you as athletic directors can work on with your student athletes is, even if it's a dead period for their sport in the calendar, there's still so many things that the students can do, right? I always say, listen, you're students every day, depending on dead period or contact period or live period, whatever you call it, right? So you want to make sure that those students are still working hard in the classroom. Spend that dead time when coaches won't be coming to see you, or when the students will be coming to go to visit, to work on making those college lists, working on their profiles about their game film or their statistics, reaching out, right? Even though college coaches cannot be doing a lot of things during this time, students can be very active. And that's important to know. Or be organized, right? Spend this time where you may not be playing in front of coaches to just sit down, and whether it be old school pen and paper, create some sort of a document, type it all into a program about where are you going to be going in the next couple of months. So when the coaches do call, you're ready. You can say, oh, I'm going to this tournament, or our team is going to play in this sectional. That you want to make sure you've got that figured out. And then also, just continue the athletic piece too. The quiet period is a little bit different. During the quiet period, prospective college coaches can talk to recruits on college campuses. But there are no home visits, and there's no watching recruits play live. They can welcome recruits to campus. So unofficial visits can take place during a quiet period. And coaches, obviously, at this time can still text, email, call, and the social media piece can play a part during that quiet period too. But again, students, regardless of what period it is for coaches, can still be working on those pieces as a student athlete. What can you do during the contact period? And this is really full force, right? I'm married to a coach, so I can say this is when it's the most busy time for a college coach, because it's all hands on deck, right? They're calling, they're emailing, they're looking at the social media, they're doing home visits, they're watching live, they're offering official and unofficial visits. This is really in the calendar year of a college coach, this is when you've got your whole staff working on this. And so at these times, it's a little bit busier for those student athletes potentially. They're making sure that, when they go to those games, they're going and takes time off of school to go on these visits. They might not have time to sit down and make these college lists or work on any college applications, right? So I always say, make sure that those tasks you have to do happen during those dead periods, because come contact period, you want to make sure that you're at your best. What can the students do during an evaluation period? Again, there's a lot of activity here. It's just in terms of the lingo, evaluation and contact, depending on sport. And again, students can be actively doing athletic and academic things at this time. At the Division III level, this is where it's a little bit different, because at Division III, coaches can contact and interact with students with no restrictions. Division III has taken off all of those restrictions like Division I and II have implemented. And so coaches can speak to student athletes at the end of a competition at any time. So if you actually watch this, it's a pretty interesting dynamic. But if you're at an event and you see some coaches leaving, but there are some college coaches staying, they're probably going to be Division III coaches, potentially NAIA or JUCO. We'll get to that. But there are definitely different rules and much more freedom and flexibility at the Division III level. Official visits for Division III can begin during January of a student athlete's junior year in high school. NAIA has some additional rules as well, so all these to keep track of. But NAIA really is stressing that student interaction with the coach, that coach-student relationship. They want to allow for more time for that to happen in high school. And because of that, there are no recruiting calendar restrictions for NAIA schools. They can communicate freely. There's a lot of direct interaction. A lot of those students really have a lot more robust conversations with NAIA coaches because there aren't those restrictions that the NCAA would put on their college coaches. So recruiting at 2-year and junior colleges, those coaches have a little bit more freedom. Also, their rules are a little different. There are some visits. So that's a misnomer too, is you can't go on a visit to a junior college. That's not the case. You can take a visit to a college, just no more than 2 days and 2 nights. They can't offer any inducements or gifts, but there is definitely some ability, right, to take these after the junior year in high school. And they can also have meals purchased. So a junior college official visit looks a little bit like a Division I or Division II visit in terms of the meals can be paid for. You can stay for 2 days and 2 nights. So there's a little bit of similarity there. So we had this student athlete timeline, and we've written one for student athletes, but then also we said, you know what, let's spend some time today to talk to the athletic directors about your role in their timeline, right? You're starting to work with them at 9th grade, and really, how can you play a part in this piece? And so I think having that conversation about, are your student athletes on track, right? Utilizing their honest game academic eligibility report, starting to track in 9th grade, because as we talked about in the beginning, academic eligibility starts in 9th grade. So therefore, recruiting starts in 9th grade. So making sure that they're still on track. Know the core course GPA. This is really important, especially if they're hovering around that 2-3. You need to make sure that they know their NCAA GPA is different from their general school GPA. Reminding the students to register for the Eligibility Center. And as athletic directors, you play a really crucial role, I think, in this. Jump on to play NAIA or the Eligibility Center for Divisions 1 and 2. Create that profile page. And make sure that they do that starting in 9th grade. That's when the messaging will start to happen from the NCAA or the NAIA. Also talk about summer school. I think athletic directors and coaches, you know your students best. And so these conversations might have to loop in the counselor to think about what the next couple of years might mean. Once 10th grade rolls around, I think this is really make sure those 9th grade items are complete, but encourage your students to ask for help. You can start to see in 10th grade, it's a little bit of go time where if there needs to be some remediation, if there's some things that have to happen and change course, now is the time before it gets too late. This is when athletic directors can be helpful in transitioning that Eligibility Center account to be a paid account, because you have to have a paid certification account to sign an NLI and just go on visits. And that will start to happen, in this next year. So in the 10th grade year, having those conversations. Making sure that the student athletes are monitoring, watching for those task lists. Athletic directors will have tasks, counselors will have tasks in the NCAA portal, but students will also have tasks. And that's important to be watching for. Make reference to their college list. Again, we talked about that. Coaches and athletic directors know the true ability of your student athletes. So having them kind of check in on that college list, and do you have a little bit that are a little bit too far reaching? Are you thinking about your athletic ability? And then this is the piece where the school has to step in and help, because that official transcript has to be uploaded by the school and not the parent or the family or the student. And so they need assistance from the high school for those transcripts. Come 11th grade, make sure that those 10th grade items, and this is really when the SATs will start to happen. And right now, as you may know, the NCAA has kind of punted on use of SAT or ACT. So we're in a holding pattern right now for those students entering college next year. But come January, in a couple of months, they'll be voting again. So we will keep tracking on that. You'll see some good education pushed out from Honest Game based on that vote by the NCAA and if SAT or ACT are needed. But if it comes to play again in terms of the eligibility piece, definitely reminding them. Well, they may not need an SAT or an ACT to be academically eligible from an NCAA's perspective or an NAIA perspective. Many schools are still requiring the test score for admission. And so going back to the college list and almost adding that as a piece, do I need to take a test score for acceptance into that college or to major in a specific major that I want? Have your students reevaluate their college list. That's important. This one above there, pardon me that I skipped it, but that 10-7 rule, this is really important. The Honest Game report actually hones in on this rule because at 11th grade, this is the last chance to make sure that your student athletes meet that 10-7 rule. And that was the rule that says 10 of those 16 core courses must be completed before they reach their senior year. So 11th grade is crucial. You have to be tracking on that. If they don't have them now, they only have summer between 11th and 12th grade to finish to meet that 10-7. So you've got to make sure you're tracking on that now. Students that start to go on visits, so you want to see if you can help in any way, make sure that you're aware of those. Verbal commitments start to happen. I always joke, you know, my 10-year-old could verbally commit tomorrow, you never know. But these verbal commitments are going to be happening and you want to celebrate them, but also be true and talk about what that really means. We have some good blog content on our website about what does a verbal commitment really mean and how do you translate that into an actual commitment come senior year. Teacher recommendations is always good. We'd be reminding them. Athletic directors and coaches, you may play a part in that, but definitely reminding your students. And then at the end of 11th grade, again, rallying with the counseling team at your high school to be able to upload those transcripts. And now it's go time, right? In their senior year, this is really when we're narrowing down what's going to happen in post-secondary. And so making sure that those core courses are all set. If the test scores need to be taken again, this is the time. College applications, you can start them as early as August 1st to be submitting them. So depending on where they're applying. Many students now are applying early action. And so realizing that this fall right now, this is a very busy time for them to be getting those applications in. And if they're fall student athletes, it's busy in the athletic side too. So this could be a little stressful time for student athletes. Financial aid. Back in the day, all of the financial aid people on college campuses used to say, there's no romance without finance. The old FAFSA deadline was Valentine's Day. Get those in by Valentine's Day. That is not the case anymore. Students should really start filling out their financial aid forms with their families and parents fall of senior year. Get those forms started. The earlier, the better. Potentially, the more aid they'll get if they can get them in earlier. That's important, right? And then summer school and virtual classes. This is where you're tracking with that honest game report. If they need to pivot, if they need to course correct, if they need any more additional classes, this is the time to start planning for those. And a couple other things that happened in 12th grade. This is an LI signing, right? And so we've seen some great celebrations across the country about what to do for those students. Do you have a breakfast? Do you have, the backdrop, have some paparazzi going on? But it's a big decision. It's exciting, but it's also really at that time, this is when the other coaches need to stop recruiting that student. And they can almost take a step back and just exhale. They've made their decision. They've signed their NLI. That's going to be happening, right? The amateurism certification is also needed during this time. If they're graduating early and they're entering college, that amateurism certification should be completed October 1st. Those that are entering in a normal fall after 12th grade, they'll fill it out on April 1st. And then again, making sure that the athletic director and the counselor are in communication to get those transcripts up on the Eligibility Center portal or the NAIA portal with proof of graduation. That's really important. We actually, have seen a couple of times where schools are uploading a transcript that doesn't have the graduation date on it, and that does not close out their academic certification until they see the NCAA sees that graduation date. Here's another QR code for you. We've made this checklist, as I said, for students too. So if you want to be handing this out, you can click on our QR code here and have them in your office, hang them up, on your board. Maybe the locker rooms can have one on the outside of their door, but we really wanted to walk through all of the things to do. There's a lot to do for a high school student. And I think really taking the roles and what can the athletic director do? What can the family do? What should the student really be doing on their own? Talking about the role that everyone has in the success of the student athlete is important. Right here, we break down that difference between the official and unofficial visit. And a lot of it comes down to money and what can happen during this visit. So official visits really is where a college coach and an athletic department will pick up the expenses from soup to nuts, right? Travel, entertainment while they're there, meals and lodging. There may be a campus visit included in an official visit, many times done by potentially someone from the athletic department. Many times they'll jump onto an already planned campus tour. But that's important to know because on the unofficial side, this is where a student athlete goes to a high school, goes to a college on their own expense. Expenses to get there, while they're there, lodging, all of those things are happening at the family's expense. The unofficial visits are unlimited in number. Students and their parents and their families and their checkbook can go to as many schools as they want. Official visits need to be tracked and logged, and there's a set number for students based on their sport. So it's important to be logging those and watching how many officials are you going on and how many unofficials are there. A little bit about camps and clinics, and these are happening, especially for fall sports. These are happening pretty quickly right now. That institutional camps and clinics must be open to any and all entrants. So if any of your student athletes get emails or notifications, says, a camp or clinic open just for you, that's not the case. It has to be open to everyone. There might be a few things where you could have sign up at this time and get a reduced fee. But to be a true ID camp or clinic at a college, it has to be open to everybody. And that's important to know. The camp admission here, as I spoke about, students cannot get free and reduced camp admission from a four-year school. So what you need to be aware of as you're communicating with that, they cannot have that now. As I said, if you maybe sign up by a certain time, maybe everybody can get a reduced price if you sign up a specific way, but a one-off will waive your camp fee should not be happening. I would definitely, as athletic directors, be aware of those things because you don't want your student athletes to get caught up in a potential recruiting violation unbeknownst to them. A little bit about the NLI. We are less than a month away from the first NLI signing for this year. And it's a binding agreement. The minute that the student athlete puts pen to paper or fingers to the keyboard by signing their NLI, it's all over. The recruiting process is done. They've committed to the school is committed to them for at least one calendar year, and an athletic aid, a grant and aid, is attached to it. And when can a student athlete sign? There's a couple dates throughout the calendar year, which we'll have on a future slide here. And as I said, at the end of the year, the college coach and the athletic department have two options: to renew the NLI at the same number or higher, or non-renew it. And so once they sign NLI in high school, that is for their freshman year. But then come by July 1st after that college freshman year, that's when either a non-renewal or a renewal will come out. And so as many times students are saying, is it for 1 year? Is it for 2 semesters? Is it for 4 years? Make sure that they're reading that NLI agreement that's different for each 4-year institution that's sending it out. What happens after you sign it? Whew, as I said, you take a sigh of relief, but there are still some binding pieces that will come in the next upcoming months. The way that the calendar is for college admissions and NLI, sometimes they don't fall in sync. And therefore, students are signing NLIs before they're accepted to the college. And so it's important to know that a denial of admission or failure to meet NCAA rules will make your NLI null and void. And so NLI signing, while it's great, and as I said, sigh relief is good, you want to make sure, though, that you're still accepted to the college and you're meeting your initial eligibility rules. Here are some dates that we have for you. As I said, we're less than a month out from the early signing period for basketball, as well as other Division I and II sports. Basketball also has a late period, and then depending on the level of football, they have various periods throughout the year. I think as athletic directors, it would be great for you all to be involved in kind of creating this recruiting toolkit, as we called it. What could you do to help prepare your student athletes for life after high school and playing in college? And I think the first thing is, again, including an academic eligibility plan from Honest Game, a high school transcript. That's crucial. As I said, as a college administrator, if a coach comes into my office, I'm only going to pay for them to fly to go see someone who's academically eligible, right? So you want to make sure that they stand out. Your student athletes stand out as being academically eligible first. Then the athletic pieces, right? Help them or make sure that they have up-to-date information in terms of a highlight reel, statistics, latest meet scores, something like that. A nice, easy way for a college coach to contact them, their family, their athletic director, their coach, their travel coach. Again, college coaches are busy. And so if you can lay it all out for them very, very easily, it's going to help in the recruiting process. The last bullet is really important. As I said, there's thousands of recruits across the country. And so sometimes coaches' plans change. All of a sudden they were going to fly somewhere and then it got canceled. They're going to go to this meet and it got canceled. And now they have free time. So where can they go? And if it's very easy, this recruit gave me a nice agenda of where they're going to be in the next couple of months. That's really helpful for the college coach. These next slides we have are just a little bit of an insight into what the Honest Game report will look like if your school is jumping on with Honest Game. And again, this was probably the number one reason that I left 20 plus years on a college campus to join Honest Game. We've completely made it so easy and seamless for students, families, athletic directors, counselors, college coaches, recruiting them to see what is the academic eligibility status of this student athlete. And so you can see here, Serena Venus is our example. We use a very basic red, yellow, green stoplight system. So the big D1 is in red, ineligible for Division I, eligible for Division II, Division III, and JUCO. We say why in each of the levels. We're tracking on academic requirements for all of those NCAA core courses. We have a sliding scale that's interactive for those students to use. How high does my SAT have to go if this is all that my GPA is going to be? But that big blue download button is important. We can download that report. You can send it along in your recruiting toolkit. Athletic directors, you can have it at the ready. Coaches can have it. It's really great to have everyone in the village. From a high school dashboard, this is where everyone at the high school can jump in and see specific student athletes at their school. So you can sort by grad year, you can sort by Division I eligible, you can sort by the team that they're on at your school. This is really a 30,000 level foot look at how your student athletes are doing in your high school. We can also show across the board. So I think as athletic directors, this is really important for you to see how are your student athletes at your high school doing, being eligible for Division I, Division II, NAIA. Is it a core course issue? Is it a GPA issue? And we kind of break down, this is an easy dashboard. You can click in and see the analytics every day. We want to be that important piece of the glue that brings everybody together, right? The Honest Game report. We can talk to families, coaches, athletic directors, and counselors, realizing you all play a part in that student athlete's life, and we can really bring you all together. So to finish off, Courtney, I'm the other Courtney, but this is Courtney Secularis, who is our senior manager of high schools. And if you want to follow up with Honest Game, Courtney is who you would contact. This is her email and her phone number. And we're really excited to be working with more high schools in the MIAAA, and super happy that you had us on today.
Well, thank you, Courtney. I can tell you as a former athletic director and being involved in a number of student athletes who had the opportunity to play at the next level, the information that Honest Game has, and I just can continue to be impressed with all of the information that's there to assist our athletic directors. ADs, I'm going to give you a couple pieces of suggestion here. Just remember how important it is to have that web. I think it was maybe slide 5 or whatever, that the student athlete, the coach, the parent, family, you as the athletic director and your counselor are so important to this team to have your kids have the opportunity for success. And my suggestion would be is that this session is being recorded, that within the next few weeks, you ask your counseling department to sit down and spend 30 minutes with you and buy them lunch and say, you know what, let's watch this webinar, because I think it can be really, really helpful. Counselors have a tremendous job that's in front of them. And if we can help with some tools that they would understand, it would definitely help them in helping their student athletes. So I thank you very much again, Courtney, for your expertise. And it looks like we do have a question that came in. And Courtney, I'm going to ask you if you could answer that. I lost it. I don't know if it.
No, that's okay. We've got some questions coming in the chat, so I can answer them. We'll see if we can stump Courtney today. The first one is NCAA Division I the only division that gives financial aid for athletics? And that is not true. Definitely a misnomer out there. Division II gives scholarships. Division III does not give what are called grant and aids or athletic scholarships, but there is need-based aid where the coaches can definitely suggest and support that situation. NAIA can give scholarships and JUCO can give scholarships. So Division I or bust, because that's what's going to pay my way to college, is definitely not true. So I'm glad somebody asked that question, that it's Division I is not the only level that can give athletic scholarships.
Great. There is a question here about the role of the athletic director in the college recruiting process, and I'll just share with you from my past experience. Again, I think it's so important that there's open communication, and sometimes it has to be realistic information, and you gather that from the coach, from the student, knowing, and a lot of times I think there is a misunderstanding of the recruiting process that's there in place. Honest Game has some tools that will help you, but you know, the important information is that there's a good line of communication with all of those people that are involved, and as an athletic director, you do have some responsibility with it. So
I couldn't echo that anymore, and I think
let's see, given the money, boom, 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 the financial assistance. There's a question here. NCAA did not require test scores for 21-22 or 22-23. Should I still encourage your students to take the ACT or the SAT? Several of the students are receiving camp invites. Does this mean they're being seriously recruited? If you could answer the ACT question, and then we can maybe tag team on the seriously recruiting piece.
Sure. So definitely test scores, if available, I would highly suggest that your student athletes take them, because many colleges are still requiring them for admissions. And so once admissions time comes, you don't want to be scrambling to find a test date when you might have a competition. So definitely I would say to student athletes, if there's a test date available, jump on it. The other part is, even if this college does not require an SAT or an ACT to apply, the specific major that the student athlete may want to major in may require it in terms of getting accepted and placed into that major. And so that's a lot of layers. It's pretty deep in, but if the decision to take a test on a Saturday, you know, in October, take it, because definitely that's important. I think right now, as I mentioned before, we'll be tracking on the vote, and how the NCAA feels test scores should be played into this initial eligibility moving forward. And if their decision is to keep it or not, what will that do to the other requirements? And so we'll be pushing out some information come vote time in January, but definitely I would suggest if there's a test date available to have your student athletes jump on it.
Great. And you did talk about it briefly, but you know, students receiving camp invites or things along this line, I think that misperception is there that back in the old days, when I was back in high school and you received a piece of mail at home from a college coach, you felt that they were you know, highly recruiting you, and yet to really find out that not hundreds of pieces of mail left the office that day, but thousands of pieces of mail left that day. And I think with the technology that we have today, it's even more so. So even though students may be receiving information that seriously recruited, I'm not sure that I would take that as a being seriously recruited. Now, many of our kids and our parents think they are, but the reality is those pieces of information and literature are going out to thousands and thousands of kids. If you want to add some things to that, Courtney, I'd be happy to let you.
I agree 100%. I think, you know, realizing with technology now, it's just so much easier. And so it used to be hundreds and now it's thousands of pieces of mail. But what I would add on to that is if students are going to jump on to, I'm being recruited heavily and I got an invitation to a clinic where there's going to be a lot of students anyway, that might be your only option and your opportunity to get seen. So come in ready, right? I think I always say every camp or clinic or every game is your job interview. Is, you know, that day you might not be expecting that a college coach is going to see you, or you go to that clinic and a college coach is going to be there, but they could. And so you want to make sure that you come with your best foot forward, you know, bring your A game, and give it all you've got. But just know that you might not have been single-handedly selected, but you know what, if you show up, give it your all.
Great. That's what it looks like for our questions, Courtney. Again, I appreciate you being here and sharing this with our with our Michigan ADs and ADs, as was said before. Sharing this with your counselors is I think probably the most important step of what you should be doing right now, because the team that you put together to support your student athletes and helping them with that opportunity or possibility to get to the next level is very, very important. So we're going to be done with the series of 3 that we have put together. They are all recorded. They are all on our, this will be within a day or so up on our website. Any ADs that are having issues finding it, please reach out to myself or Karen Lenar, our executive director, and we'll assist you in getting the information you need. So that